Are Ozempic and GLP-1s similar to the keto diet? Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Westman, and welcome to my channel where I review and debunk nutritional misinformation online. In this video from Tom DeLauer, who's a prominent influencer online in the keto community, we're going to look at the reviews of studies that Tom found looking at Ozempic and other GLP-1s and keto diets. I was hoping there would be a randomized trial between the two and don't have that yet. But we'll go through these studies and wait till the end to see my final thoughts.
If we really look at Ozempic and how it works mechanistically within the body, and then we look at something like a lower carb protocol or metabolic flexibility dietary protocol and how that works mechanistically, we see that there are some eerie similarities. So how do they actually stack up against one another? It's pretty surprising when you actually look at the literature. But this isn't just going to be a comparison video. We're going to talk about how you can intertwine things, how you could use things appropriately, and some really solid strategies. Let's jump right in. We're going to talk about...
Well, let's always consider the source. And if you've watched my channel, I've followed Tom DeLauer and for a while and think he's a great resource. And in this review of studies, notably is the absence of a study that actually randomized people to either keto or GLP-1. So I'm afraid we're going to be looking at each diet study or drug study independently and trying to draw comparisons to them. And he brings up some really important points that I'm going to kind of rephrase in a different way to try to make it a little more understandable. Hey everyone, I've got something exciting to share. If you love the content on this channel, our YouTube membership is the perfect way to take your experience to the next level. As a member, you'll get early access to new videos, be the first to see fresh tips and insights. Plus, twice a month, I'll be hosting exclusive live Q&A sessions where you can ask me your keto questions and get personalized advice. You'll also get shout-outs for recommending videos to the community, just our way of saying thanks for helping spread the word. So, if you want early content, direct access to me, and a more personalized experience, hit that join button below and become a member today. Looking forward to seeing you in our live sessions.
So first we look at a crossover design study in diabetes, obesity, and metabolism. This was a study where they escalated a dose up to 1 milligram per week. Now, of course, they compared this to just a regular control group. Now, with this, they found the people that were administered Ozempic ate about 300 calories less with lunch and a little bit more than that with dinner, ultimately leading to about a 725 calorie deficit compared to control. So they were eating significantly less, 725 calories less than the control group, and a total of about 5 kilograms of fat mass lost. So that's really nothing to sneeze at. And believe it or not, the muscle loss wasn't over the top. So I know there's a lot of kind of bashing Ozempic, talking about the muscle loss, and that can be a very real thing, but that is very dependent on the person and their lifestyle. But now let's look at how low carb or even a ketogenic diet compares to this, because it's quite fascinating.
Right, so the GLP-1s, the GLP-1 GIP second generation shots work by suppressing hunger, making you feel full, and also there may be some side effects from it, but the hormones that come out of the gut after you eat are the signal that the shots are mimicking. So basically you get the feeling after you eat, and that's from the shots, and then you eat less because you feel fuller. It's important to remember that we're talking about a comparison study of a drug versus the standard kind of diet. So it doesn't tell you about any comparison to the keto diet yet. So now let's get to other studies that talk about the keto diet.
So with this, we look at a study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. It took a look at a higher protein low carb diet. So in this case, it was like 30 to 40% calories from protein, which is pretty high for most ketogenic protocols. And they compared this to a moderate carbohydrate diet, which was like 35% or so carbohydrates. Now, the low carb group in this case ate between 160 and 200 calories less per day and lost about 2 kilograms of total fat mass. So that's about half the amount of total weight loss, a little bit less than the Ozempic group, and really only reducing calories by about 160 to 200 versus 725. But that's where we kind of get into this whole game of like, are you losing weight too quickly, right? So with the lower carb group, it was kind of interesting because they were able to have metabolic changes that actually occurred, whereas the Ozempic group maybe didn't have the same metabolic changes.
So when you look at studies on the GLP-1s or the keto diet, they both cause you to eat less without telling you to eat less. I figured this out in our first study going back 25 years ago when I just told people to eat a low-carb keto diet and they ate less. So it became a low-calorie diet even though you didn't have to tell people to eat fewer calories. If you think about it, when you take a weight loss shot or a pill, you're actually eating less when you're not telling people they have to eat less. So you're getting this similar kind of effect where when the body goes into a fat-burning mode from the keto metabolism, you start eating less because you're burning your body fat first. So this is an important point, and if you're new to the keto low-carb concept, what you do is you learn a system of foods to eat, and you never have to really worry about the calories or the amount you eat because you automatically eat less, just like one of the shots that you might take. One difference is that you don't feel like you have to change your food when you take the shot. So if someone says, well, I couldn't give up bananas on a keto diet, but then they take a shot and they give up bananas because they don't have the hunger for it, you're just giving up bananas through a different mechanism. So some people have to get through the withdrawal of the carbohydrates in order to get that feeling of not wanting the banana, but essentially the same result happens. So hunger goes down on a shot, hunger goes down on a keto diet.
But before we look at the low-carb diet, what was really interesting is that there was a 24.7% reduction in visceral fat. This is where I get a little torn up. I don't like people just hopping on Ozempic for the sake of hopping on it, but man, at the other side of the equation, I look at this and I say, if someone can have a 25% reduction in their visceral fat mass, now hopefully they don't gain it back, but that is a massive reduction in inflammation and dangerous, like seriously lethal fat that's on their body. So if someone is very overweight and they need to use this to get over the hump, I really understand, and I don't have any like dog in this fight. I just see that as, well, maybe this helps them, but they have to be able to maintain it, right? So it's really important. That's why I'm always like, find ways to control your appetite no matter what.
Yeah, this is a really good point that a lot of people will use these shots to lose the fat mass, lose the fat weight. But we've seen this before with weight loss surgery. The real question is, can you maintain the weight loss? Of course, the diet industry and the diet pills and the diet shots, weight loss shot companies want you to stay on their product forever so that you just will always use their products. But most people don't want to be on a medicine, and the precinct results, the data coming in are that people don't really stay on these shots longer than a year just because of side effects and all these other things. But you can lose some fat mass. And now let's get into the difference that Tom is alluding to in the metabolism. So it's curious to me, and I would like you to sleuth it out for me. In the studies on the weight loss shots, I haven't found a study yet that showed the ketone levels in the large randomized controlled trials. But if someone's losing that much weight with the weight loss shot, I'm pretty sure they're in metabolic ketosis. Diet, no, not nutritionally ketosis, they're in pharmacologic ketosis because they're using a medication to get into ketosis. So if you can find a study, or even in your own experience, if you've been on a weight loss shot and you've measured your ketones, I'd like to know. My belief, my hunch, is that most of these people are in ketosis. It's just they didn't measure it and didn't have it in their clinical research that I can find. And I've looked at a lot of different weight loss shot papers. But so to lose weight with a medicine is different than losing weight on a keto diet. As Tom's alluding to, it's because you're in a different type of metabolism when you're not eating carbs and you're on a keto diet, eating great foods. And here's the difference between running your machine really cleanly and or drawing upon your fat. So if you use a weight loss shot, but you're still eating, all of the bad foods, the highly processed and sugary foods, but you're eating less of them, you're still running your body, your mitochondria are your mitochondria are oxidizing those carbs, even though there's less of them. So there's a different metabolism when you're losing weight on a weight loss shot than the cleaner metabolism when you're on a keto diet. Even though both of them allow you to draw upon your fat, it's a difference in the running of your machine. And I think it's cleaner and better to lose weight on the diet by itself because you've changed the food and you get the metabolic benefits of the less oxidation by the carbohydrate, and you get to draw upon your body fat at the same time. So one of the main messages in this video I see is that the metabolic change and differences between weight loss shots and weight loss diets are important. That it's getting better results, better metabolic function if you just use the diet alone. I don't see this being emphasized much. Most doctors will just think of the weight loss shots as giving you fat loss and weight loss without regard to the food that you're eating when you do eat.
The HIT and the placebo group, so the groups that didn't do low carb or didn't do low carb plus HIT, they didn't lose as much trunk fat, they didn't lose as much overall central adiposity, obviously visceral fat, total fat mass, and the groups that ended up doing more of the low carb and the low carb plus HIT, they actually preserve more muscle. And there's reasons behind that. We're gonna talk about that. The adrenergic response, the ketone bodies. So what's the deal here? Which one's better? Okay, obviously, Ozempic is going to drain visceral fat a lot faster, but we're talking a pharmaceutical intervention here. So what if you were to do Ozempic plus have some lower carb strategies so that you actually get enough protein and fat in and also do occasional HIT? I mean, that could be a good recipe, but one of the drawbacks that we face with any kind of GLP-1 is you're so low energy, you don't want to push that intensity. So that becomes really difficult.
Well, these are good theoretical points, and you always consider the source. I don't think Tom, well, I know he doesn't have a MD, he doesn't have a clinic, but he would have the ability to teach people and hear feedback on the channel, on the comments. But in my experience, the low energy from being on a weight loss shot, again, it's the feeling you would get after having a huge meal. And what do you want to do after you have a huge Thanksgiving or Christmas, Hanukkah dinner? You don't want to do much. So the idea of combining weight loss shot with extensive exercise, and if you're not in the exercise world, HIT is high intensity training. And most of my patients are not in this situation to be able to consider doing the HIT kind of protocols. So, but if you want to maximize your muscle retention on any kind of program, you want some sort of resistance training combined with the weight loss program. So combining low carb and keto with the shots is an interesting idea, but I've had that happen clinically. And so some people actually get more side effects from either one alone. They had no side effects, but when they add them together. So remember, when you do a keto diet, you're doing a medicine potency sort of intervention. It's prescription strength. So if you add a keto diet to medication, you may have more side effects from either one of them. Vice versa, if someone comes into me on one of the weight loss shots and they've lost 10, 20, 40 pounds, I might coach them to add in the protein-based sort of diet, whether it's keto or not quite keto, and then follow them carefully for side effects. And that's something to be considering if you're attempting to bring together a strict keto and a shot kind of approach. Be wary of side effects and be sure you're being followed by a clinician who understands that the two of them together may become too strong. And for me, it's not the diet that you would change, it's the medication that you would change. So I explain to people who come to me on weight loss shots that I typically teach keto without any sort of medication. without the weight loss shot. A lot of people today are coming into the weight loss world through the opening door of the shots because doctors don't necessarily tell them about all the other opportunities for weight loss. And often I can just explain that the shot could be swapped with a keto diet and both will still work. And it's really up to the person to judge and decide what they want to do. But a really important point here that there are differences in the metabolism, even the amount of visceral fat loss. But I don't get into the nuance of that. I think any kind of weight loss program will eventually lead to the visceral fat loss. I suppose if you're trying to really do the most optimal one first, you might listen to these nuances and all. But to me, the big picture view is that the visceral fat will go really finally, regardless of the method you use.
From a sustainability standpoint, Ozempic can be difficult because it's so little effort. Because you don't have to exert effort, it's really hard to instill a lifestyle change. So people go on Ozempic for a year or more, and then they come off of it. They haven't really established a habit, so they're just going to naturally go right back to things. They might be in a better metabolic state, but it's not going to really help them that much.
And that's a big, important criticism of using just a medication without some sort of behavioral or dietary program, or off-ramping people from the medicine to a new kind of dietary program. I think that would be fine to do as well, but optimally, when you're on the weight loss shot, you'll learn about proper nutrition and give yourself the best nutrition you can when you do eat, so that your body is functioning as cleanly as it can when you're losing the weight. But the Achilles heel of any sort of non-dietary program is that you haven't taught someone how to maintain it by using these other things. That's for sure.
But there was a study that was published in Nutrition and Metabolism that really pointed out how lower carb preserves muscle and has some huge benefits. You really would preserve muscle more. So one, there's an adrenergic stimulation. So you're actually preserving muscle through this adrenergic pathway. This is essentially inhibiting muscle protein breakdown. You're in a slightly stressed phase to where your muscle actually is preserved. The presence of ketone bodies, it would be so easy to produce ketones while you are on something like Ozempic because your calories are so low. So it's going to go up so quick, and ketones are extremely muscle sparing. Okay, so you preserve a lot more muscle. There's also a big boost in growth hormone that occurs. This is, again, a muscle sparing effect. It prevents muscle protein breakdown. So you can actually capitalize on this. It's really important. So huge benefits. If you are going on a GLP-1, go low carb. Don't use it as a crutch to just take your existing lifestyle and shrink it. No, use it as a chance to try a new lifestyle with added benefit and potential for better adaptation to that lifestyle.
Yeah, it comes to mind that while someone's on the weight loss shot, clean out all the carbs from the pantry. Take everything out of the house while they're not really paying attention because they're not hungry. Then when they come off the GLP-1s, there's no carb to go back to in the house. Now amplify that to the nation. If while the nation is on GLP-1s and all these other shots, you clean up the food, then you let people come off these shots, they won't have the same addictive foods there. And now that's a fantasy, but that you can see there's a time window when you're on the shot that you can make other behavioral and environmental changes in order to make this sustainable. But again, the idea that if you're eating junk foods while you're on one of the weight loss shots, you're not getting the cleaner metabolism that you're getting from the keto diet itself without all of the junk foods. One of the very interesting and I think great comments that has gone around, I first heard it from the Means, Callie and Casey Means, was that if you had a dirty fish bowl, dirty fish water, you don't just medicate the fish, you would change the water. And so if you're just on a medicine and still consuming the junk foods, yes, you're losing the fat mass, but you're not getting the cleaner metabolism while you're losing the fat mass.
There was also a study published in Exercise and Sports Science Reviews that took a look at a low-carb diet and found that there was this activation of what's called PPAR. Now, this changes the cellular structure to prefer fats. If you prefer fats and you're in a deficit, imagine what's going to happen. Imagine what would happen while you were on this extreme deficit induced by Ozempic while you are having an actual shift in your cellular structure and demand. Not only are you going to get more fat loss out of it, but you're going to preserve more muscle. And when you come off, not only are you going to have metabolic flexibility, but you're going to have metabolic flexibility with more weight loss, making it easier to transition without a massive rebound. So this isn't me endorsing Ozempic. This is me being real. People are going to use Ozempic. I think it has its benefits. I think we need to know how to intertwine lifestyle with it.
Well, of course, when he says Ozempic, that also applies to Wegovy, Saxenda, Zepbound, and Mounjaro, and there are going to be more shots coming out in the future. So any of these sort of pharmacologic medicines mimic the hormones that come out of these medications, mimic the hormones that come out of your stomach and intestines after you eat. And so some people get nausea and stomach issues as a result of it. Some people don't want to do much and lose the ability to have pleasure, for example, because what do you want to do after a huge meal when these hormones come out? Sometimes you don't want to do anything. So I can imagine that any of those feelings you might get after a big meal will be replicated by these shots. Thanks to Tom DeLauer for pulling out these studies to go over these details. The hunger goes down on the shot or on the keto diet, so you eat less without telling people to calorie restrict. That's a huge similarity. The differences include the metabolic function of the mitochondria running on fat, not carbs. Depending on the diet you eat, with the shot, you may still be running on carbs and not cleaning up the metabolism as well as you can on the fat-burning diet, like a keto diet. Then, of course, the long-term success. If you stop a shot, you haven't learned a new behavior, you go back to the old way of eating, you'll regain the weight. Same with a keto diet, though. If you just use it for a little bit and then you go back to your other way of eating, it won't be sustainable. But at least you have learned some behavioral change to stay away from the carbs, which are the fattening foods. So I like the video. I think the studies that are done aren't quite where we want them, and it would be great to see a randomized trial of a keto diet versus one of these medications. I designed clinical trials always with 2 active treatment groups. I didn't like placebo-controlled trials when I was designing trials. Sure, it would be nice to see a medication versus placebo, but also a lifestyle arm in those clinical trials to guide us what to do and with diet alone, and also then to help people who can't afford or can't tolerate the medications. It would give us a much better idea of a broader way of treating people with obesity, and having the money to do clinical trials in this way is really difficult for non-corporate entities. So anyway, it would be nice to see clinical trials of these shots versus a keto diet or even other diets that are super effective. If you like this, please like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, look for new content on Wednesdays and Fridays. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our YouTube membership for early access and exclusive live Q&As with me. Just click the join button below or support us with a PayPal in the description.